Welcome everybody to Pitch Global Boss Capital Partner event today, educational event, which talks about the basic theme is 7 steps from innovation to funding. And before we get into the agenda and details of the event, we usually have sponsor presentations. Today, we are not having formal sponsor presentations, but I still want to acknowledge some of the sponsors of this event. The main sponsor is US government agencies, NorCal SBDC Tech Futures Group, and they have been huge supporter of the Northern California ecosystem. And we have been a satellite of their organization for several years now, and we work very closely together. So huge thank you for the powers to be there for blessing our event.
Can you give Scott Rogalski just to say hello? Scott, just open your mic and say hello to us.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Axel, and thank you, KC, for putting this great event on. Yeah, sorry about joining last minute, but yeah, we're blessed to be partnered up with Pitch Global, Axel, and KC. So thank you.
And that's great. You know, sometimes innovation is also a lucky accident. And today, Scott showing up and introducing himself is a lucky accident, which we've already got out of for this event. So Scott, thanks for being there. And where opportunity preparation meets luck is where the magic of innovation happens. So on that note, Pitch Global is backed by others like TriNet and others too. And we just acknowledge everybody in our ecosystem for being a backer of Pitch Global. And today, by the way, I am Asaf Chaudhary. You can call me Casey. I'm founder and entrepreneur in residence of Pitch Global. Our company is Pitch Globally Inc. and brand is Pitch Global. And this event is co-led by my fellow entrepreneur in residence, Axel Tillman, who you've seen here. And also, Pitch Global, we are into investor events and entrepreneurial education. And before we introduce our main speaker and presenter, we want to share a couple of minutes of what is entrepreneurial education. Now, entrepreneurial education is like the A education, means it is usually the opposite of normal rules of education, which means most entrepreneurs pick this education up in bits and pieces through experience. Some go through a formal methodology, but often it is taught by people who have not really sold companies or been entrepreneurs. So the thing is, we want innovators to aim for the stars, but before they get on the rocket ship, the engine has to be working. They have to be some gap in their entrepreneurial awareness and education, which needs to be fulfilled. And the highest form of entrepreneurial education is from educators who has created amazing success again and again and again. And today we have, this event is co-hosted by Boss Capital Partners, which has exited 14 companies. Their co-founder was part of $2 billion sale of Magento to Adobe. And with this kind of knowledge, information, and insight is just unavailable anywhere else. So we are very fortunate to co-host this event with them and to particularly have Randall Loveu of Boss Capital Partners and co-creator of Boss Methodology to bless us with his presence. So today's event is step 1 of 7 steps from innovation to funding. And in order to do that, one needs to fill the gap in entrepreneurial education, which Randall will teach you how you can do the right thing and not do the wrong thing. So on that note, I hand over the floor to you, Randall. Please give your background a little bit more and also share how Boss Capital Partner works and talk a bit about Greg Shepard and other people there, and then get on to the main act. Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you, Casey. Thank you, Axel. Thank you to the whole Pitch Global team, to all the founders, entrepreneurs here. I know your time is valuable. We're going to make this brief. I promise this will be informative. And then at the end, there's an offer, right? A free offer for courses that we'll get into, which is around this whole process that I'm about to talk about. So the reason I'm here today is I work at a company called Boss Capital Partners. It's an investment syndicate. And on top of that, I also co-founded a company called Boss Startup Science. And the way those two things are aligned is they bring together the methodology that we use within our portfolios, and which led us to even creating an investment syndicate in the first place. And we're here to teach you that process today and why it's so informative, especially at the stage that a lot of the founders are at today. So prior to Boss Capital Partners and Boss Startup Science, I had spent 15 years as an entrepreneur, starting companies, working as a consultant to help companies start up. I was part of a very large transaction that won 4 private equity awards, whereby I was the CMO that helped divest Magento Commerce from eBay Enterprise. And then 3 years later, due to our growth, we sold for $1.8 billion. I leveraged that to start a consulting firm, and then eventually transitioned into an investor. So my specialty is growth, and around growth, which is informative to these people on the call and the founders, is the fact that I'm able to tie exit strategies.
Join the meeting.
Which is the primary goal for founders, to build your company successfully into a strategic exit. And tie that to a go-to-market strategy. So through these practices and principles, we leverage the BOSS methodology to transform companies. And I'll walk you through that here in a second. But first, I want to talk a little bit about the investment side of Boss Capital Partners. So as Casey mentioned, we've had 14 successful exits. That's out of 15 investments. The 15th investment is still active, and it's on a 2 to 3 year trajectory for an exit. Our special sauce, our differentiator, is the BOSS methodology. And what we've done is we've taken that methodology and codified it, turned it into a curriculum that could teach you the processes that an entrepreneur needs at every stage of an entrepreneur's journey through their maturity, and also added practicum in there. So while you are learning and educating yourself, you are also using your own data and information to build your company. And this is the foundation for any great startup. And we'll walk through how we got to that process here. So we're going to keep this brief. Like I said, I'm going to be cut off in about 15 minutes here. So I'm going to try to get through all these points, but it's important to know that this is the first of many. So what I'm going to be laying out here is the foundation. This deck and presentation is going to be shared after. So although I'm going to be going through this quickly, you are going to be offered a free course or free entry to a curriculum at the end of this through Pitch Global. And there are in-depth videos that cover everything that I'm touching at a high level here. So I'll encourage you to go and log in after this presentation. So before I jump into the curriculum, how to use it, it's important to know why we created it. Myself, Gregory Shepard, who I encourage you to look up, has been a very successful investor, entrepreneur, has won several awards. And he has spent his life collecting people, one of which is myself and some of our other partners, who specialize in particular areas of a business. We all have come from modest backgrounds, and have bootstrapped ourselves essentially and learned the hard way how to build a business. It's through that process and us putting our perspective specialties together that we were able to create something truly unique and really solve a problem that founders and entrepreneurs are facing today. So to touch on this slide at a high level, 4% of people living in poverty are able to overcome financial hardship. 98% of those who do it by one of 3 ways. So either through an inheritance, the lottery, which is crazy, or starting their own business, right? So 75% of those that do make it out start a business. But people who have the personality and have the ability to start a business typically face some neurodivergent problems, right? And this makes it difficult to codify a process and make it available to everyone and something that everyone could leverage, right? But we approached it from a different perspective. We realized that no matter who you are and where you come from, 90% of startups fail. So money really isn't the solution. Resources may not even be the solution. There is a particular education level missing in the ability to start a company. So we did some research, right? And if you do research and have done research over the last 10 years, which by the way, that 90% failure rate for startups has existed for over the last 10 years, which is crazy considering all the technology innovation that we've gone through in that time. And yet that number remains the same. What happens, and this isn't going to be a surprise to anyone, is people are literally playing a numbers game. So if the 90% failure rate exists on the entrepreneurial side, that means that 10% of investments are working, right? So 1 out of every 10 investments that an investor makes is going to get a positive return or going to be considered successful. Therefore, investors are requiring companies to unnaturally shoot for higher valuations. So if they do exit that company, that one exit could forgive the sins of the past 9 mistakes that they've made or bad investments, right? So the two sides are working against each other. If you look at the reasons and why this is happening, right, the number one that you're going to see is that they ran out of cash. And then there's going to be a mix of just about everything you see here. Again, these reasons have been consistent over the last 10 years, yet they're not solving the problem. So we consider these lagging indicators. There's a level deeper that you need to go. Because of time, I'm not going to go through the specifics of the research, but the output of it is essentially from our side. And we spent 5 years researching over 2,000 companies, hundreds of interviews. We came up with 5 specific reasons. Management team dysfunction, failure to understand customers. And this is an important term that we're going to be talking about a lot, which is ideal customer profile or ICP. An incomplete exit strategy. Again, this is one of the differentiators of BOSS. Most cases, entrepreneurs and founders or startups do not begin their process by developing an exit strategy. We talk to and disagree with many other investors who say there's no time to do that. Grow first. And once you hit a certain growth, right, a mysterious number, it is then time to start planning for your exit. We believe that this is completely backwards. And again, as I was talking before the recording started, we use a tool called the North Star to kick off every company, whether it's from an investment perspective or we're starting that company ourselves. The North Star is a tool that we use to help set the direction of the company or a roadmap. And think of it as a GPS. The 2 most important components of a GPS is where you are right now and then where you want to go. You enter those 2 components, you will get a route to your destination. Think of the North Star in a similar fashion, which includes a complete exit strategy. Not having these things typically leads to overvaluation, right? And again, this goes back to the 10% of investments work, 90% of startups fail. The numbers game has caused unnatural things to happen in the market and force entrepreneurs to go on a unicorn trajectory while they may not be a unicorn, right? And again, a $50 million exit, $100 million exit is not a bad thing. Not every company is set out to be a billion-dollar company. In fact, less than a percentage of any companies that start out will ever become unicorn status. Now, because companies don't operate themselves in a standardized fashion, having all of this information as a foundational aspect to plot and plan the trajectory or maturity of your company, when they seek advice, they're often getting bad advice. This does not mean that the people giving them advice are trying to hurt them or they're doing it unbeknownst to themselves because they have no idea the context in which the company is in currently, how to know what they've done in the past, what they should be doing in the future, right? All of this is housed within BOSS. And so by using BOSS, you enable yourself when taking advice from people, which we absolutely encourage you to do, to give them the full context so that you don't chase bad advice, essentially. Okay, so we took those, and how am I doing on time, Jill, just before I?
Absolutely fine.
Okay.
Yeah, we are not in a hurry. Randall, this
Okay.
is, very insightful. If you need to go over 5-10 minutes, totally fine with that.
Okay. So in order to create this curriculum, which is based off of a life cycle, which we're leading into, we took the reasons that companies fail or startups fail, which I showed you before. There's the 5. And we had to balance this or cross-reference it against something, right? And what we chose to do is to look at the trajectory of a typical startup. And in that trajectory, from both an entrepreneur or founder's perspective and an investor's perspective, there are specific maturity milestones that have to be met, or validation points, right? Points of validation. And you'll hear this often: product market fit, customer validation, revenue validation. These things are happening, and investors are asking questions around these things, yet there wasn't a process to really get to these levels of maturity or maturity markers. So we went through the life cycle and we said there are 5 that really stick out to us, and that, if met, typically help a company with the number 1 reason that they fail, which we saw on the slide before, which is running out of cash. And running out of cash is due to a lot of different reasons, either mismanagement, receiving too much money and not knowing what to do with it, so spending it recklessly. So by following these maturity milestones, we were able to create something truly unique. And so the milestones are these: to vision, right? And so this is very early on in the process. Before you have built the company, you have a vision typically. And this vision needs to be validated by someone, of course, in the market. Someone not only who is a subject matter expert in the market that sits at a high level and could say this business works for this market, but also a potential user, right? Businesses typically start for a couple of reasons: to preserve something good, to improve the way of life or something through automation, or to right a terrible wrong. So the typical foundation of it is, I'm a person, I see a problem, I'm not happy with it, I come up with a solution. That solution could be leveraged by other people, and now I have a company, right? A basis for it. But before I go take money, I need to make sure that this is something that has legs and can actually work, right? So I need to get 2 very important points of validation: customer and subject matter expert or industry leader. Once I have that, I could feel comfortable taking money, and I could raise the confidence of investors so that they could help me. I could get to that next level of validation, which is to product, right? So I'm going to take that vision idea. Typically, you're going to go to an accelerator. The accelerator is going to help you identify ways to get that cash. You're going to use that cash to create a product, and then you need to get that product validated. Well, who better to get the product validated than by the people who originally told you that your vision was a great idea? So what you start to see forming here is what we call a user advisory group. This is a group that is close to you, that represents outside market validation, but in a very easily accessible way, so they could help you get to these points, making sure that you don't hit that critical reason of failure, which is running out of cash. Once you create that product, now you need to get it to revenue. Well, if you've done a good job collecting thought leaders and people that could validate your ideas, product requirements to help build your product, you then should be able to have them test that product and use it, right? And either become a paying customer in terms of revenue, or because they did you all of those favors, you have a contract for future revenue, but they're using it now. This is an important point of validation. When I create something that someone said that they would use and would like, and I went and raised money for it and I give it to them, if they don't continue using it when I try to take it away, the red flags, sirens should be going off. I may not have validation, and that's a word of caution to move forward, right? So this revenue validation point was extremely important. Now, the next level after you have revenue, and this could waver depending on the type of company you have and the type of exit that you're shooting for, but is to break even, to become essentially independent of the need for investors. When you could bring in as much money as you're spending or more and get to profitability, the chances to experience dilution as a founder drastically go down. And the opportunity to raise more money essentially goes up, right? Because now you have a formula for, I know if I put money in, I'm going to get X amount of dollars out. And that's an important term that we'll cover later, which is CAC to LTV, customer acquisition cost to lifetime value. This is a key metric to help you get to this point of maturity break even. And then finally, the next stage is to exit. There's an important evolution that happens as you're developing your company, whereby you start out developing a product or service that could be leveraged by the market and bought by the masses, right? And in high volume typically. At a certain point, your company needs to transition to where your company, now all 4 functional areas, become the product that you are going to sell to an acquirer. And the potential acquirer of your business will look at your company just like a product. Right? They're going to go through several levels of validation. The top 3 that they go through are culture, technology, and customers, right? So built into Boss, we have ways very early on before you get to that point, right? Beginning with the end in mind and thinking very early about how to make sure that you could achieve those points of validation, making the transaction easier, keeping the multiple up, and the valuations up. So what this has all led to is the lifecycle model. This lifecycle model is a tool that we use, again, from an investor perspective and from an entrepreneur, founder, startup perspective. We look at this lifecycle as leveling the playing field. Typically, investors are asking you questions in order to identify where you sit on a life cycle similar to this, right? And based on where you sit is how they evaluate the risk of your business, how much money they should give you, how much value your company is worth. So there's a lot of things that go into this. So knowing where you sit in this life cycle, and not only that, but where you need to specifically go next in order to achieve the next milestone, which is either more growth or more money or whatever it may be, you'll use this life cycle. So again, built within this are the 5 reasons and more, but the top 5 reasons that startups fail, the maturity milestones to help you get through them. There is a curriculum built to help take you through this process. So when you first enter the curriculum, so after I get done talking, there's going to be a screen that shows you the link and the login. You are going to see what's called the essentials of BOSS. BOSS, by the way, I should have started with this, stands for Business Operating Support System. So what this is going to do is by leveraging this curriculum, it is going to be a vehicle that's going to help take you through this maturity life cycle, making sure, again, that you are very purposeful in building your company that you're growing the right way, and that you have an ability to raise money at will because you're meeting the validation criteria that investors look for, and you could show that to them in a preemptive way. There's some important things, and is it okay if I keep going, Casey? I want to be sensitive.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely, Randall.
So looking at this life cycle, the first thing to note is, it starts at vision. Like I said, well, not every company is at vision level, right? There's maybe some people on this call right now that have a product already. Maybe he even have attempted to go to market or are in market right now. That's okay. What this does is it balances, and again, there might be people who have taken investor capital. It's okay. You could have a cap table and investors on it, still leverage BOSS. We utilize BOSS from an investor perspective to help clean up companies, companies that have matured the wrong way. And how we do that is we try to understand, okay, where are they from a fundraising perspective? You could look at this as pre-seed, seed, Series A, Series B, right? And there's all sorts of terms. We don't put them in there because it creates a lot of debate trying to identify what those rounds are. But rounds 1 through 5, typically. It's important that you align yourself to where you are in your fundraising round and where you are in the maturity that you've created through efficiencies within your company. And if you are ahead of your maturity by fundraising, there are ways that you could leverage BOSS through essentials in order to catch yourself back up. So again, you don't have to be from the ground level here. When you're creating your essentials curriculum, or when you're going through it, you're going to notice that there's a process of the curriculum. First, you're going to be told what and why it is what you're learning that's in there, right? There's 11 foundational elements to build your business. You're going to learn that through video and through written word. There's also audio, right? So there's 3 different options for you to learn that. The learning leads into what we call practicum, which is a series of questions that you're going to answer and processes where you're going to input your company's information into the system. By entering your information into the system and going through the 11 courses and processes, you're going to end up with a pitch deck. These are the elements essentially of a pitch deck that you could then take to investors to articulate your vision, to articulate your points of validation, where you are in your maturity life cycle, where you're going next, and of course, all the traditional elements of a pitch deck. So there's extreme value in going through the courses. Other than that, I'm going to be covering the specifics of this life cycle in future webinars. So I encourage you to come back because tucked within here, there is a lot of detail. You're kind of seeing the picture. There's a lot of what, why, and how that we'll go through that could help you in your journey.
Great.
So Axel will, look at if there are questions, but I have one question, Randall.
Mm-hmm.
The part of what we are doing at Pitch Global is letting entrepreneurs get into the mindset of attracting corporates and CVCs from earlier on, both in terms of funding and partnership. And I am amazed to see many CVCs are investing in seed round now. We just hosted event with TDK Ventures and Goodyear, and both said they invest in seed round. So your experience of taking company, spinning out company from eBay and selling it to Adobe for a couple of billion, I mean, that's phenomenal. Can you also give a couple of tips to entrepreneurs how they can start thinking about corporates as future partners?
Yeah. So going back to the life cycle, I mentioned the top 3 points of validation that an acquirer goes through, and it's culture, technology, and customers. The customer piece is very important. What you're going to be doing in Essentials is identifying your customers through an ICP and going through your ideal acquirer profile, right? Which these are the potential people that you're shooting for an acquisition. And you're also going to be identifying their customers. And the reason that you're doing this is through customer attachment rate. That is one of the quickest ways and easiest points of validation for a strategic exit, is for the acquirer to be servicing the same customers that you are, right? So they're focusing on share of wallet. By you offering a new and improved or a different solution, you open up and improve their share of wallet within their customer base. So they want to see that validated. Casey, to your point, from a CVC perspective, one of the leading indicators to acquisitions is partnerships. And traditionally, you've seen these large corporates have very strict partnership models, where requirements to become a partner, the levels of partners that they had were very high. And these were a certain type of company, right? Typically over $10, $15 million in revenue. What you're seeing as a leading indicator to show that CVCs are opening themselves up to companies earlier downstream is their partnerships are tied to companies that are much earlier on their maturity curve. And they're doing this to get access to potential solutions that they are considering building or don't want to build and want to support through the partnership and potential investment or acceptance into their program, and fulfill that need for their customers. So keep that in mind. And again, this is within the curriculum, that partnerships is a great way to increase your validation. And you're seeing more corporates be more open to partnering with smaller and earlier stage companies.
That's great. By the way, I just saw on LinkedIn that someone I'm connected with in Pepsi Ventures, they invested $15 million in an early stage fund. So maybe they don't want to invest early stage, but they are going through funds in which they're investing, through whom they can kind of get early adopters of startups. So yeah, go ahead, Axel.
I would like to actually assert and highlight one important element of your entire presentation. And that is the expectation on valuation of young entrepreneurs or even older entrepreneurs. We see so often that people come in on the vision, maybe product stage, 40 million pre-money. I give you a classic example of why that is actually wrong. There is a company, I don't mention the name, up in Menlo Park. They raised in the beginning of 2020 at 40x in sales, 40x in sales, $60 million at a valuation of $1.5 billion pre-money. I was part of a company called Arcside that sold for $1.5 billion at $318 million in sales, 5x of sales. So that 8 times higher valuation will break this company's neck on any follow-on round. They either will not get capital, or there is such a dramatic down round because they've completely lost sight of the end game. Yeah, you cannot be proud of that valuation. You actually need to be sad about the valuation that you got at that time. And Randall, don't you agree?
100%. I mean, there's investor expectations, right? So if I take $40 million, I know that investors are expecting at least a 3 to 5x return right now. So I have to ask myself, is that $40 million going to equate to over $120 million in revenue? If it's not, I'm going to put myself in a situation where I'm potentially going to have a down round, and I'm going to eat the dilution as a founder for that. You need to be very cautious, and it's a great point, Axel. Going through this process. Here, I'll tell you a story about how we used Boss for one of our portfolios. So there's a company called Delarock that was in the transportation services arena. They built these card readers to go on buses and public transportation. they were fumbling and overbuilding essentially the product for about 5 years. Once they started applying the BOSS process, the first step was to look at the market and the ecosystem and the potential acquirers. And when you look at that, you start to understand the valuation drivers and requirements for acquisition, right? What do they look at and what's important to them in terms of how they measure your company and how much money they're going to pay for it? What we realized is that it was not a multiplier based on revenue growth or based on customer acquisition growth, a number of customers. It was a strategic fit. They had the customer base. They could take care of margin. They could take care of growth. What they really cared about is that there was a new market segment that they wanted to break into, and they wanted 5 to 10 customers from that market segment and for them to retain for over a year. What that required us to do is not raise excessive amounts of money and try to take this new solution and put it in every bus and public transportation around the world, right? All growth is not good growth. We took just enough to get the product to MVP, put it in the hands of 5 customers who later transitioned to revenue paying customers because they appreciated helping us through the process of getting it right and using it for free for a while. And what that led to is 1.5 million in top line revenue, and in 2.5 years, an exit for over 45 million. So a 40x multiplier, right? For building the company the right way and not taking on excessive amounts of cash, building it according to the North Star, the life cycle, and what your strategic opportunity is as a founder, startup, and company.
There is a question from the participants, and the question is, why is revenue before going to market? And I tried to answer this, but let's hear your answer.
So this is part of the process, and within BOSS, there's a term called ABLE, the Alpha Beta Launch Experience. I mentioned that validation points from outside the company are very important, right? So when you go through the BOSS life cycle, in vision validation, you take a group of people, users and industry experts, and get them to validate that your idea is good. That's the premise for raising money. You use that money to build a product. You go back to those people once you've raised that money and say, you've said this is a good idea. You said you would use it. What are the requirements? Now rubber's hitting the road. Specifically, what should I build here? How should it look, right? They're the premise for your requirements. Once you've built that, you take that to them and you go through an alpha beta experience, right? Where they're now commenting on the requirements. It's starting to come to life and become real for them. At the end of that process, there's a very important validation point. If you've built something of value that can work in the market, those people who have tested it, given you the idea or requirements from your idea, helped you test it, they should want to continue using it, right? If they are not willing to continue using it, whether it's for revenue right now or future revenue, right, based on the favor, you should not move forward. So what you're doing in the revenue stage is you're validating that I can earn money from a particular type of ICP, a particular type of customer. Thinking back to the acquisition thing that I mentioned, right? The 3 levels are requirements for acquisition. One of those 3 is customers. So proving very early on, before I start raising a lot of money, go out to the market and make a big splash, I need to prove that this type of customer I can bring in, and I then prepare myself to bring it in at scale. The other reason is because when you go to market, this timeline is important from a timing perspective. And if you'll notice, the entire life cycle is 3 to 5 years. When you have a vision and product, you're very low key. You're behind the scenes. The market really doesn't know about you other than the investor community typically. When you start to push that product out and you go to market, a big flare has gone up, right? And any differentiation you have now is up for grabs, where another company with more resources, right, typically your competitors, now understands that idea, that value proposition, and it typically takes them between 2 to 3 years to build a competing solution to yours. So going to market in the sense of I am launching my website, I'm pushing outbound messaging, I'm advertising, I'm making people aware that I'm here, is very dangerous, right? And you want to make sure that you can validate, you can bring in revenue before that. Now at the end here from optimization, right, it's very important to start thinking, when is the right time based on the market conditions to start shopping the company, right? Because you have to leave upside. And that goes back into raising too much money and getting yourself into a situation where it takes too long for you to reach the investor expectations. In that example of raising 40 million, having it have to be worth 120 million, if it's going to take you 3 years to do that and several more rounds, you're just digging yourself a hole. All right.
Plus additional risk factors, right? Life can throw you curveballs. So you think you can do $120 million, but then something changes in the market and all of a sudden you cannot reach it. And so the bird in the hand may have been better than the two in the bush.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have, a pandemic, a global pandemic listed in here, right? But that could happen, right? And we've seen that. So market shifts, market crashes, consolidation of the market, and then just external factors like a pandemic. I mean, that could derail you the entire time. So having yourself on a life cycle to know, right? For instance, a lot of our companies during the BOSS process, in fact, all of them survived the pandemic, but they were able to understand how long how big and how long the pivot should take in order to get back to some sense of normalcy, right? And because they were adopting the BOSS principles, having a liquidity buffer, because BOSS covers everything from the tactical execution of your marketing to the financial aspect of your KPIs, valuation drivers, cap table, you name it. So yeah, the one point I guess I'll get to there is that in a crisis, there's no silver bullet. Planning and preparation prior to the crisis, documentation, standardization, understanding how your business works, right? That will save you in a crisis.
And to your point, why is the revenue prior to going to market? I was part of a startup company, and our initial customer, which was security, network security, was driving the product. But when we wanted to standardize sales in the outside, we had to learn that the security guys could not make a single decision. It was the networking folks. So after you learn by going out in your first real sales attempts, you need to shift the entire marketing strategy and sales strategy over to a different sales channel, to a different messaging, because the security guys were only secondary in the decision process.
That's a great point. And that's another great example of why holding off on going to market, right? And you're going to market, you're sending your solution out, but to a canned audience, right? It's protecting yourself. And the important thing is, as market conditions shift, right? If you're in a bull or bear market, people are concerned about different things, right? Making or saving money. So typically a single product holds two narratives. For instance, an automation solution could be in a make money situation. You could add more people and they could be doing more, right? In a save money situation, you could reduce headcount and make your people more efficient. So controlling the narrative, understanding how the market conditions play into that and where you fit in the life cycle, allows you to test these options and make sure you're planning for the right type of market.
Absolutely correct. Casey, are we going now over to our 1 minute pitches?
Yes, Axel, let's do that. Randall, once again, thank you for amazingly insightful presentation. It's just the start. This will have 6 more once a month, so that the 7 steps from innovation and funding, takes place. And we have the BOSS Capital Partners, BS's methodology to give the life, to plug the holes needed to have a holistic entrepreneurial education, considering all, not just now, not just being in survival mode, but also developing foresight so that the right business outcome is achieved. So before we start the 1 minute presenting,
can I make a procedural suggestion? Every entrepreneur that wants to do the 1 minute pitch, turn on your video camera And once you're done with your portion, turn it off. This way I can keep track whom I have to call or not to call.
Well, that's great. And also, maybe we can start with Scott, because today, there was no formal presentation from NorCal SBDC Tech Futures Group. So if he's there, why doesn't he give us, of course, he's not limited to 1 minute, but Scott can give us some, the vision and the mission of how US government agencies are empowering the entrepreneurial ecosystem.
All right,
Okay.
cool. Awesome. Thank you very much, Casey. Appreciate it. I'm on my phone here. So yeah, Tech Futures Group. We're federally funded by SBA, Small Business Administration, and they're also funded by the state of California. And because of this funding, we come to entrepreneurs like yourself at no cost. And Casey and Axel are one of our affiliate partners, as they mentioned earlier. So you're able to take advantage of their services or one-on-one advising services to help you start, scale, get access to awesome partners like Boss Capital and other access to resources and VCs and angels. And so we offer these events, these no-cost webinars that Casey's doing here today with Pitch Global. And then we also offer no-cost SBIR and STTR grant servicing to help you get that grant financing that you need to start or grow. But yeah, thank you very much. We specialize in all techs, all different tech, deep tech, AI, bio, med, health, education tech. So yeah, we're here for you at no cost in Northern California. Thank you.
That's great. And Scott, you had invited us, Axel and I, to some event hosted by UCI Beale, about a few months ago, which we took part in. And one of the presenters talked about how they were groomed by Boss Capital methodology. And their boss's CEO, founder, Greg Shepard, is in San Diego. So as offline events are opening up, especially in LA, they have opened up. So maybe we'll do something with SBDC, SoCal, and Boss Capital Partners and all. Just a thought that always, that's the rule of sales, always be pitching, right? And so on that note.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. That's cool.
Welcome. And thanks, Scott. And to reiterate your point, we had a couple of clients, one client, Telemetrack, he just closed his round, 800K, but he applied to SBTR grant on his own money and he was turned down. Then I introduced him to Chuck and he got a starter grant to find other grants. He got like 70, 80K. And now he said publicly that he has been verbally offered 15 times more grants with US government Air Force because they are disrupting the cargo theft business using kinetic energy. And, entrepreneurs, the founders were, from Harvard Business School, worked in Bain and McKinsey, very top shelf. So we are making Edgar is guiding me to write a, story, whatever it is called. We've never made one. Edgar has been after me for ages to create a story which gets into your website, but we are starting with the track.
It's called a success story. So that's cool.
Great.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Welcome, Scott.
Thanks
for, and Randall meet Scott, Scott meet Randall. And now I will introduce Axel, formally introduce him as my fellow entrepreneur in residence in Pitch Global. And he and I, he in his past life worked in Sandal Road. He was US CEO of Overseas Fund of Funds. And he's big supporter. And he's also involved with celebrity events. Sometimes he becomes acting CEO of other companies raising funds. Once he was CEO of City Summit Celebrity Network. And it inspired him so much that he moved to LA. And he is very dialed in Silicon Valley and LA ecosystem. So he and I now, we are going to curate the elevator pitches, and we may make comments and we may ask few of them to talk more. Once again, this part of the program is innovation by letting everyone present give up elevator pitch. It cannot be perfect, then it's not innovation. So pardon us in case, some of it doesn't turn out the way you expected. But once again, this is innovation. We are trying this, and we want to, improvise and keep making this part better and better. So on that note, Axel, why don't you start picking the companies and let them give a 1 minute elevator pitch. I would recommend they very quickly say who he is, what they are looking for. If whatever makes you stand out, like you have already raised some capital, say that. Whatever, if you have already have some customers, say that. Or even your company is brand new, but if you had an exit, or in your previous company, say you are VP in IBM, say that. Whatever raises your status and gets your attention right away. That's what elevator pitch is all about. And on that note, Axel, why don't you take the lead on this?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Casey. It's always a pleasure to be with you. It's always a pleasure to be in the entrepreneurship game. I recently call myself the entrepreneur's entrepreneur, because Boss Capital and what we are doing, we have the same goals. We want success of our entrepreneurs at the end of the game. Now, my dear entrepreneurs, I only have one that turned his camera on. Does this mean that nobody else wants to give it a shot today? More cameras are coming on. Danielle, you will probably turn your camera on, but the one who had his camera on first is Karl Mulligan. And so you are on stage first. Please give us your 1 minute pitch.
Okay. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Hi, I'm Karl Mulligan, founder of Supercritical Power Solutions. I'm working on an engine technology to help in the global effort to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And I do this by re-engineering the internal combustion engine to run on carbon dioxide, using no fuel and producing zero emissions. With a background in polymer chemistry and a lifelong car enthusiast, I thrive on developing creative solutions to technical problems, and I'm thrilled to have received the U.S. patent for my invention. This technology could be applied to convert most gasoline or diesel engines in a variety of vehicles, including cars, trucks, marine vessels, and even construction equipment, enabling engine manufacturers to meet strict emissions regulations while retaining current infrastructure, supply chains, and workforce. The opportunities are massive. The global diesel market alone is nearly $250 billion. I'm looking for a global partner with sufficient resources to help develop and exploit this technology.
Great. So there are many different attempts on going this route. How do you position yourself, let's say, against hydrocarbon-driven vehicles or electric vehicles? How do you see you're playing out there?
I'm looking at the larger engine markets initially, more expensive engines, things that would fit in maybe super yachts between 1 megawatt and 2 megawatts in the 12 or 1300 horsepower to 2600 horsepower. Initially, I think it would be cost effective to apply the technology to lower price engine to start using high pressure diesel common rail technology, which is pretty common these days, and those engines are more plentiful. And I think that compared to the battery electric conversions, it's going to be quite a long time before battery electrics are going to be applied to large engines.
Do you have a co-founder, or are you looking for a co-founder, Karl?
I am looking for all the help I can get. This is, I'm working in my garage. I've got a couple of prototypes that I've got mostly done. I have some technical issues that is going to take some money to overcome. I've been doing this all on my own. I invented it. I paid for all the patent protection. I currently have a patent cooperation treaty application in that expires in April of next year. So if I don't find some way of securing the IP to preclude others from using this technology, then I only have the US. And I'm looking for, I think, it's a really big market, and I think the applications are plentiful. And I'm looking for someone who can recognize that over the next 20 years, electric engine conversions or electric motor conversions aren't going to necessarily be the ultimate goal or the ultimate solution for larger engines.
So
Okay.
I offer you right to Axel at pitchglobal.com. I'm more than happy to spend some time with you to go over in detail what you are, so that I can try to connect certain dots and certain people to you. Randall, would you like to make a comment?
Yep. And by the way, I'm taking notes on these, and based on the curriculum, going to recommend specific courses and everything. But Karl, what I would recommend when you have a minute with investors, you should leave about 30 seconds for your story, which you did a great job telling. But you need to be very specific on the ask. And to set up the ask, you need to articulate who you are selling to, what problem they have today that you're solving, how big is the market, and how much do you think you can capture with the investment amount that you're asking, which leads to what are the terms of the investment? How much do you need? What would you use it for? All should be included, in my opinion. It sounds like a
do 1 minute. That's like 5 minutes. Thanks.
Yeah, it's tough.
Thank you,
extremely
Axel.
tough. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. You can turn off your camera so that I know that I had you. The next one up is Neil Assur.
Hey, can you guys hear me? Thank you, Axel, and thank you, team. So I'm here representing LiBama. We're developing a radically improved lithium-ion battery. I'm here with Wentao Li as well, who's one of the co-founders of the company. So just for some context here, lithium batteries are the centerpiece of the biggest energy transformation of the past 150 years. We believe a better battery is going to drive accelerated electrification of vehicles and homes, even potentially air and space flight. So what's stopping us from getting there? It's actually the anode of the current lithium-ion battery. Anode innovation is critical to unlock a better battery. Today's graphite-based anodes are the same as those that were used 20 years ago. So what have we done? We've reinvented the anode for lithium batteries. LiBama has developed an advanced metal anode that enables a battery that has twice the energy density of current lithium-ion batteries, which means basically you can go twice as far in an electric vehicle, for example. It's less than 15 minutes to charge the battery, and it's 30% lower cost. Moreover, this anode can be stacked with any other battery architecture. So some of you might know about solid state technologies. This is compatible with solid state batteries, and it doesn't have any temperature or pressure requirements, which means it's not just going to be useful for EVs. It can be used in drones or consumer devices. Finally, this battery can be commercialized quickly via existing manufacturing tech facilities. So far, we developed a coin cell prototype of the battery, and we've been awarded SBIR, STTR grant from both the DoD and the NSF. We've also established a commercial partnership with the largest specialty battery manufacturer in the United States. And what we're looking for now is to expand our technology to a pouch cell prototype, which is that can be used in an actual drone or an EV. And to do so, I think we need $1.5 million, which will go primarily towards research and development. And I think once we get there, comparably to other companies in the space, this would be potentially $1 billion opportunity. Just one last thing, the team that I have around me. So I am, like I said, I'm working with Wentao Li. He founded this company and developed technology. He's been working in this space for 15 years. We have 3 advisors who are all CEOs of companies that are billion-dollar plus companies in the energy manufacturing space. I myself am a Wharton graduate student and have also worked in McKinsey. So we're excited about the path forward and would love to get advice and any perspective on how we can accelerate that.
And how much have you raised so far?
So we actually haven't raised anything so far. We've bootstrapped it, and we've gotten SBIR and STTR grants from the DoD and NSF that have totaled to about $250,000.
That is, however, capital raise in my opinion.
Non-dilutive, but yes, you're right.
Yeah, non-dilutive capital raise. That's which is one element in the validation chain, as I would like to call it. Now, let me ask you one critical question. The critics of electrovehicle and electro markets say that the cost of destruction of the batteries, the cost of production of the batteries equal out the energy advantages during their lifetime and have no carbon neutral impact at the end of the day. Can you talk about this a little bit?
Yes, well, I mean, I think we're very early in the stage of maturity in terms of how we're going to advance the battery. And I think what you're seeing is actually there's an ecosystem being built around the lithium-ion battery that's going to manage it from every stage of the life cycle, Axel. So while you're right, today there doesn't exist a lot of great technologies to make the lithium-ion battery more effective. And there aren't a lot of great technologies to help with the recycling of lithium-ion batteries to make them more effective. You are seeing a lot of companies that are raising like extreme amounts of money in the space to actually advance that technology. I think that that is because there is a huge bet that this is the future of us being able to create a sustainable sort of like way of transporting, storing energy, right? And so I think like our bet is that in the future you'll see a lot of like companies focus more on this, and that technology will mature, and you'll start to see this become much more palatable, right, than it is today.
Okay.
Yeah,
Randall.
I have an addition. Sorry.
Yes, please.
So the carbon neutrality for the electric vehicle is actually depend on the composition of the power grid. So currently the renewable power source is only a small part of the power grid. So with a gradual increase of the power grid by the renewable energy, the turning point will be much easier, and the whole life greenhouse gas emission will be much reduced by the electric vehicle.
Great. Randall, your turn.
Yeah, awesome. A really cool opportunity. And I've seen a lot of activity in this space. So you're in a hot market, which is really cool. My question, I guess, would be, is you're going to use 1.5 million for R&D. What's the objective output of that? Will you have a prototype, and will you be able to sell that prototype? And if not, how many rounds money do you suspect before you're on that trajectory?
So 1.5 will enable us to have I have like a goal for different money. So for 1.5, we'll be able to fully develop the prototype battery, and then we'll be ready. I mean, once the prototype is developed, then we'll be ready to raise the next round for pilot production, which will be in the 20 million side around.
And just one thing to add to that, Randall. Thanks for that question, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, we do have a prototype. It's in a coin cell, which is like something that you can use basically on like your watch, for example, right? But I think the real market here is actually for what's called pouch cells, which apply to larger battery-powered devices like vehicles, right? Now, I think there are some other individual companies in the space, right, that have raised a lot of money based on just having that pouch cell prototype because of the potential of their technology. For us, we feel that when we get to that pouch cell technology, right, and prove that it can be valuable to a drone or to an electric vehicle, then we're on the stage to where it's the next step is how do we commercialize that and how do we start manufacturing that? So I think getting to that stage is what that 1.5 million is meant to do. Thereafter, we raise another round to help develop a manufacturing facility to go directly to customers.
Got it.
I have one feedback for this. I was on the board of directors of a semiconductor company.
Yeah.
And the market was on the verge going from 32-bit processors to 64-bit processors. Their value proposition was 4 times the power at 4 times the output at the same power level, or a quarter of the power for the same efficacy. Or they missed the boat to bring the 32-bit processor to the market and finding phone manufacturers that were willing to advertise a 4 times longer lasting phone And they were shooting because the market was in conversion to 64-bit. They said, we need to go to the 64-bit market.
Yeah.
If there is a market for your coin cell, I would definitely use every brain, Boss Capital, anybody else that you can find, whether you can't make a revenue stream already out of your coin cell. If there is a value proposition good enough to make that happen, because if you're shooting the next level up, or you say on the next level, oh, I need to make a car battery, you may end up raising $120, $400 million and you don't go anywhere. That's only my little advice of my experience. But Randall is nodding his
100%. Yeah. And that's what I was going to say, and not to take up too much time, but what those kind of questions lead to and where investors get nervous around investments for R&D and development is that it's going to be on a path to never being done, right? And especially when you're an engineer founder, which is a great thing, and there's extreme value in that. The investors are looking at that my fear is they're going to be building forever and they're never going to be satisfied and we're never going to have a product, right? So the term minimal viable product, when you're talking about R&D raises, fundraising, you should articulate specifically, this is the MVP that I'm building towards. And then we're going to validate that through customers and revenue before we move on to future roadmap development.
Perfect.
Yeah. This is great feedback. Thank you both. Just one last point I would add is we do have a commercial partner with a large specialty battery manufacturer contingent upon us reaching the pouch cell, which is why we're aiming for that as well. But I think your points are really valid and we'll definitely take them away. Great.
Thank you so much for your presentation. If you turn your cameras off, the next one up is actually Dream Big.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Just as it's vital for competitive startups to find investors, the same is true for nonprofits in obtaining grants. However, nonprofits, this is something that they have to do every year for the life of the company. Like myself, everyone hates the process of spending months writing soul-drenching grants. It is overwhelming and time-consuming. On top of that, it takes away from the work we are really passionate about, which is working with our communities and setting our goals. And paying for a grant writer, which costs anywhere from $3,000 to $7,000 for just a single proposal, is sometimes not possible or a solution. My name is Rene Diaz. I'm a founder and CEO of GrantAid. GrantAid is an automated grant writing assistant that makes grant writing faster, easier, and cheaper. It's easy and stress-free to do in minutes and at least 30 times lower in cost than hiring a grant writer. We include a grant database that also speeds up the process of finding grants. Our target market, minority-owned nonprofits in the urban areas that are education and community focused. Our grant database is going to release in a week. We have a working prototype of the AI grant writing app. I'm in the Future Tech League and the MIT Excel. We're in 2
Randall, would you like to say something?
I was having a little trouble hearing the whole pitch. But one thing I would say to the group is, if you did a great job by putting your company name and as a participant. So as a founder, any Zoom call that you join, you should have your name and your company for promotion, right? So that they could start tying the two together. So I unfortunately I couldn't hear there's some static, but that would be a suggestion.
I can give you the quick summary. So the grant writing process consists basically out of 2 major problems. Number one, there are so many grants that you need to identify which grant could you potentially qualify for. And there is a few technology, one pitched actually at Pitch Global a few months back, that actually do this process pretty well by putting key terms in their search engine, and they come up with all the applicable grants. And the second problem is then to write a grant. And the writing of the grant needs to make qualifications and proposals to the to cater to the grant so that you ultimately have a chance of getting the money. He says that he has AI that can auto-write the grant, which in itself will require a lot of in-depth discussion, which we don't have time today for, but that's the market he is in.
So it eliminates the amount of time it takes to get the grant.
And the grant writer, there are specialized grant writers with different success rates. The best ones have about a 70% success rate, meaning if you hire them for $5,000, you can 70% guarantee that you get your, whatever it is, $50,000, $150,000, $250,000 grant by the grant issuing authority. And he says you don't have to spend the $5,000 anymore. His AI technology will do this automatically for you.
That's really interesting. I'm interested in talking to you about this offline. Yeah, I have a lot more questions, and there's applications to some of our portfolios. So I would be interested in.
I would love to join the call because I have tons of questions. I have studied a lot in the area of language recognition and language assembly. So whenever you set this up, make me part of it.
Let me just ask really quick, who is the buyer of your services? Is it an individual entrepreneur, founder?
Right now, it's usually the founders who have a small team. They can't afford a grant writer on their team, or even if they do, that grant writer on their team is actually doing multiple jobs because it's a small company.
Thank you so much.
Very cool. I've got a ton of questions, but that's very interesting.
What information would you like me to give you? My phone number? I can just send it to you in the private.
Yeah, please.
Yeah,
I think
send
my email address will be available.
And Randall, you know how to reach me. Email me with the appointment, and then we can jointly spend some time with him.
Very cool.
Great.
Great.
Thank you so much. Turn your camera off. Our next one up is Q Young or Q Young. No, Young, right? You are muted at this point in time. Q.
Q Young.
Q Young. Okay.
Yeah. There you go.
Yes.
The world is experiencing cybersecurity costs reaching an average of $190,000 per second. It's about $6 trillion a year. What if a technology destroy any cyber threat at the CPU level, like preventing cancer at the cellular level? Let's imagine a world without cybercrime. I am Dr. Q Jung from MasterClass, and we believe we have a most effective way to protect your information from all cyber threats. Our technology secures your system proactively and inherently, unlike other reactive cybersecurity solutions. We need a $500,000 investment to bring our intellectual property and prototype to life, and ultimately protect your system and information from every kind of cyber threat. Here is our promise. We will end this cyber pandemic without endless vaccination or worries about future variants. We will make cybersecurity comprehensive, foolproof, and accessible for all, and we will no longer have to imagine a world without cybercrime. Thank you all.
Thank you, Q. I could say a lot to this. I come from the cybersecurity industry. You had a very limited amount of time to present. We understand where you're coming from, but the questions are now, the devil is in the detail. Knowing, for example, I give you only one example, that AES-256 is still actually foolproof. You cannot break into the data. And the leakage of data is actually not by breaching into the communication streams, but by the stupidity of the people clicking on links and unveiling their passwords. Once you have the keys to the kingdom, no cybersecurity measure will actually prevent that the kingdom is being rolled over. So I would be very much interested to learn how you will make a claim of 100% secure world.
Okay, so if you know about the basic of computer, the computer actually take the program written by the people or machine, and then it's coming down. The computer. There is a CPU. The CPU take the we call machine language and execute it, then something happens. That's why I mentioned it. We take this cybersecurity at the CPU level. You know, current technology, why we call it reactive is this solution protect any threat come into the computer, right? Once this computer is coming, there is no way, simply say game over. But gatekeeper of your information now at the CPU level. So for instance, you know, I'm bilingual. I'm from, you know, the my mother tongue is South Korean. Okay, so if I say something not English, you may not understand, right? Same way, we can make, you know, your computer using millions or millions, you know, the different machine language at any time. So
Yeah,
that's
I fully understand. I wrote that plan 15 years ago. I can send you my business plan from 15 years ago where we took that approach. Unfortunately, no VC wanted to fund this because it said you cannot be in the computer business any longer because it's not no longer profitable. Because we needed to fundamentally change the architecture of motherboards or phones in order to 100% accomplish what we thought. You may have found a new way, but I remember this. Casey, you would like to say?
Can I
Okay.
say? Yeah.
Well, very eloquent vision statement, but in this, there are two things. One, you have to say why you know, so you have to share your background, what makes you unique to accomplish this. And B, if you have some traction, of course, then why you doesn't become so important. That means
Right.
you're further along. So can you
Okay.
briefly give an answer blending these two questions?
Okay, so before that, you know, let me answer to what I asked. Okay, our solution just you can replace, you know, the current CPU. That's all, right? And also, it's our company. I actually have, you know, heavily involved, you know, government research through my PhD years, and also other project in, you know, the startup, and also my own startup. I heavily have an experience about, you know, the architecture level, right? So initially, this, you know, the company, we focus on high performance and low power. Currently, you know, about 60% of, you know, the instruction, which is, you know, the very low level machine language, come into CPU, but it is never executed. It's discarded. We changes architecture level, right? So we're not actually doing transistors or, you know, the other circuit. No, we changes this architecture. Okay, so that actually allow us to using, you know, the millions of language. Current CPU only using one language. So like every CPU company, they will introduce about, you know, the new set of instruction set every 2 or 3 years. So
Okay,
we fixed
we are, this is dragging us slightly. Do you have, how much have you raised so far? And briefly about your team.
Okay. Fortunately, we couldn't get any funding yet. However, the maturity of technology, because of, you know, several years of our development, we believe about 80% done. So that's why we ask, you know, the $500,000 investment to produce the prototype. We just try to contact like motor industry, like, you know, Tesla or, you know, others. So, you know, future vehicle, you know, like a Tesla push very, you know, strongly about, you know, autonomous, right? But now, you know, the autonomous car doesn't doesn't have a big issue about cybersecurity. However, definitely it's vulnerable. So in the future, many autonomous cars running on, the cybersecurity is going to be mainstream. So we ask Tesla contact Intel, hey, you guys make a CPU with this, and then we'll buy, and then Intel going to produce it, or I'm going to be produce those kind of. So we sell blueprint, not chip making anything.
Yeah. I can share with you a lot of my past history, where I went down this route as well with a totally different product company. I encourage you to contact me, Axel at pitchglobal.com. And Randall, now your comments to this.
I don't have a lot of experience in this space, but I think a theme, and this will help, is going through the courses. One of the outputs that you'll get is being able to quickly articulate who you are, what you're doing, who you're doing it for, and how you're going to get there, right? And that leads into how much money, and being able to tell that story will become a lot easier. So definitely register for the courses. Okay,
great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Q. If you turn your camera off, please contact me. I have lots of experience in that field. Okay. And now we come to Paul Wolski. Paul, tell us your story.
Nice to meet you. My name is Paul Wolski, and I have a PhD in biochemistry from UC Berkeley. And what I'm trying to do is use the immune system to attack and kill prostate cancer. And so you might have heard of immunotherapy. And immunotherapy basically allows the cancer to be visible to the immune system by blocking a target that tells it to leave it alone. Well, in my case, there is a different target on some other cells in the tumor microenvironment that's different than on the cancer itself. So this is it's an offshoot of current immunotherapy. So what I'm trying to do is raise about $500,000 to get some initial validation based off some of the literature that was done from the laboratory that I've been discussing with. I filed a patent for this on my own money, and I've made it to the full patent state. There's no, in my opinion, encumbering IP, and I am partnering with a business person right now who is assisting me with some of the development, and I'm looking for potentially some advice for getting in contact with contract research organizations, trying to maybe perhaps get a specific plan for the next level to get a value inflection. And so, yeah, it's a relatively early stage thing, but this is what I'm working on right now. Thank you.
One thing I would like to say and simplify this for some of the audience, the belief system is that the immune system would eat actually up the cancer if it wouldn't be, so to speak, cloaking itself to be invisible to the immune system. I had a discussion with one of our ecosystem. We can introduce you to him, Dr. Chris Apfel. He is from the Caritza Forum. He is their life science specialist who has actually a cancer treatment research as well. He believes that, and he explained to me that this value proposition is very difficult. So he rather takes a cancer cell, throws many different toxins at it to see which one kills the cancer, and then targets the particular cancer with the death threat, so to speak. Now, one thing you need to take a look at, BioNTech has 13 plus years, $1 billion later, and couldn't solve a single problem in the cancer research field with mRNA. So targeting with mRNA cancer cells to become visible to the immune system has failed them for basically 13 years. This is my only feedback I'm giving you on this. And I'm more than happy to make a connection with Chris Apfel for you.
Thank you, Axel. Yes, actually, I mean, mRNA would be actually an easier and cheaper way for addressing this problem. And
it doesn't work.
Yeah, I do.
But it doesn't work. Yeah, $1 billion, 13 plus years later, nothing beyond clinical phase 1. Randall, any information you would like to give?
That was an awesome pitch. You did a really good job. And
Thank
I
you.
mean, it was engaging. It left just enough for me to want to know more, but yet you hit all the tips of the ways and were answering questions as they were coming up in my head. So it was great. What I would consider is when you're going through the courses, there's a section called the ecosystem. And before you take on something like this, it's important to understand, aside from the solution itself, right, which is very complicated and has a whole bunch of things, right? There's the business side of it. And there's echo. I don't know if that's me, but yeah, and you have to decide or understand, are you building a IP that you're going to sell, which won't require a lot of overhead? Are you building a series of patents? Are you building an entire company around it? Where do the gaps exist? Are people trying to solve this today? Could you make it easier for them? So things like that, just kind of getting your footing and what's around me, what's coming up, and what should, where could I potentially go with this? As an investor, those would be the type of questions like, am I getting into something that's shooting for $1 billion IPO, or is this something that we're going to build up quick and offload to someone, or, so, but again, those are natural questions. You did a great job. It was a great pitch.
Thanks, Randall. Yeah, those are some interesting things that I've thought about, and I think talking with some people who have more business experience would actually be very helpful for me on that, actually.
Yeah, Paul, you are hitting also one of my pet peeves in the area of my interest fields. I have several verticals of interest. I encourage you to contact me. I repeat, axel@pitchglobal.com, and we can engage into a discussion there.
Yeah, and one last thing, Paul, as Randall said, I second, you did a great job starting. One other point you may want to prepare is proactively, don't get slotted as a lone wolf. That's the only thing. So if you can say, oh, my colleagues, my professor, even if you don't have a co-founder, if you don't have partners, I mean, just hint, say that, hey, my dissertation, my professor is encouraging, they are on my board. Even if you don't have, start talking to people and creating your board and team. It doesn't cost anything, but that's one perception you need to overcome. And earlier you take the bull by the horn and talk about it, rather than someone trying to kind of put you on a spot. It will give your mission jump started even more.
Absolutely correct.
Thank you all very much.
I also, one other point for everyone too, is that being honest about what you're looking for, and you saying like, I'm looking for help in these areas, right? Like that's a big positive from an investor perspective, that you know who you are, you know what you're good at. You're probably going to delegate the things that you're not. And the hero syndrome is something that investors are fearful of, is that I'm going to invest into this person who's going to attempt to do everything, become overwhelmed, and I'm going to, lose out on my investment. So yeah, great job being honest and all that. Good job.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Looking forward to seeing you soon on the call.
Sure, I'll follow up with you very shortly. Thank you.
Thank you. We have no additional camera turned on. I will reach out Daniel. Danny, you would like to give it a shot? No. We have no more entrepreneurs today that would like to get feedback, quick feedback, and from our expert at Boss Capital.
Sometimes people like to be more prepared.
Well,
so,
and if you want to do it in an individual setting, but I put my email in there. That's what we're here for, is to help entrepreneurs. So there's no judgment. I help people all the time, and they later come back for investment. So do not look at it like you have to hide your company. Get the advice and the information now, and so.
And sometimes people, they get negative feedback in public, so they don't want to talk about it. And some others think about IP issues as well. So those are also things we have seen.
Hey,
so Axel, I think this part is.
There's Nelson, who just turned himself on.
Yeah.
Welcome, Nelson.
How you doing?
We are doing fine.
So I guess why not, right? What the hell? So whenever I'm ready, right?
Yeah.
Okay, at Foil Flyer, we've created airfoiling, which is an alternative for skiing and snowboarding for as climate change makes the skiing and snowboarding industry kind of obsolete. Since the turn of the century, 100 ski resorts have closed in America. No, 70, excuse me, America, 100 in Europe, 200 worldwide because of a lack of snow. So an airfoiling, not needing snow, will be an all-weather, all-season sport. Will give you more adrenaline for less danger. My name is Nelson Hyde-Chick, Chief Adrenaline Officer for Foil Flyer.
What are you looking for? Money, partnerships?
Right now, I need a proving grounds. And I've been battling with the city of San Francisco to let me use a crane on an unused crane, but it's a crazy bureaucracy, right? And it's, I don't understand why, if I have insurance, engineering report, agreed upon fee, if use something that hasn't been idle for like a decade, why not? But bureaucracy.
I have a company that has bought in Colorado an old ski resort area that, based on COVID, they have struggled how to keep it going, what to do with it. But maybe that is the pivotal idea that you have, and you can test on their private grounds, because I think they own the property. That could be a way for you to make your next step.
Well, here, I'll send, I guess your number's on the thing. I'll give you a call.
Axel at pitchglobal.com.
Pitchglobal.com.
Axel at pitchglobal.com. Randall, you turned your mic on. You would like to say something?
Good job, Nelson, and way to go. Like, just give it a shot. That's, I love that attitude and everything. And it sounds like a really cool sport, right? Would you consider it a new sport?
Oh yeah, it's definitely, well, just to tell you what it is anybody ever been on a zip line? They're fun, they're exciting.
Yeah, in Reno, we have seen it.
Yeah.
Reno downtown.
Oh, he froze.
You just got disconnected, Nelson. Your internet.
This is recorded, so he could look at my comment to him is that while this isn't a typical investment that Boss Capital Partners would make, nor a typical company I'd work on, our founder and CEO, Greg Shepard, who I'm sure everyone will have a chance to meet, and I suggest you look him up in his background. He invests personally into new technology for hoverboards and extreme sports, as well as he owned a bungee jumping company too at one point. So he might be, and he's in your area. He lived in the Bay Area, Colorado, San Diego. So he may be able to help Nelson with some of the bureaucratic stuff.
Great.
But sounds fun. I'm interested personally, just learning about it.
Casey, it looks like you wanted to say something.
No, I think this part is over now.
Yeah.
Giving everyone opportunity. Once again, we are innovating, so it cannot be perfect, but we are getting a very good sense on how to take this to the next level next time. And
Danielle just came on. She has thought about it, and she is coming on to tell us all about Unlimited, a non-alcoholic cocktail for the youth and everybody else, of course. Danielle, turn your mic on, please. You're muted.
There we go. Sorry about that. I heard my name. I had to leave the room, but I came back in time. So I'm glad that I'm here. I'm Danielle, and I'm the founder of Unlimited, which is a social beverage and lifestyle brand. And so a little bit of background about me. I, felt the social pressure to drink alcohol from a very young age. Since I was 14, it has been a central element of my social life. And as I went into a university program that was very hard, I went to school, one of the top business schools in Canada, for finance and operations. And during that time, I actually was in a relationship with someone who was an alcoholic. And at that time, just witnessing, the level of destruction alcohol can cause in a person's life, it made me take a giant step back from it in my own life as well. But as I did that, I noticed just the social tension between a new and evolved lifestyle choice and our current social culture that does revolve around alcohol. And the more I noticed this, the more I noticed that millennials and Gen Z, the next generation, we are incorporating more wellness and social wellness aspects into our lifestyle. And as we do that, we're shifting away from leaning into alcohol in our life. We're getting away from that. But as we move away from this preference, we're met with this social tension between a new and evolved way of being that is more wellness focused and our current drinking culture. So we run into even more of a problem now that when you choose not to drink alcohol, you're met in those social moments with your only options are water or a soda, and none of them are culturally relevant. And in order to shift a cultural perception, you have to integrate into the culture that already exists. And we see doing that through the beverage itself, the central force of all those moments. So Unlimited is a ready-to-drink canned social beverage and lifestyle brand that is not altering your state in order to feel confident and connected to other people. So we don't add any mind-altering or state-altering ingredients, and we are not mimicking what the taste of an alcohol spirit or a beer or whatever that might be is. We are taking what a restaurant cocktail is, the layering of flavor with juice components, herbal components, and spice elements with soda water to create elevated, social positioned beverages that fit into those occasion moments so you can feel a part of the moment while also feeling like you have something to champion instead of hide. So we've been building our team of past Red Bull and other beverage startup marketing employees. We actually just onboarded someone from White Claw who is a part of their founding team. And we have an advisory board of executives at Coca-Cola, emerging markets, and the Honest Company founder, Christopher Gavigan, who just IPO'd $1 billion company in the CPG space. And so we are raising $500,000 to bring our product to market. We have tested our product with our early adopters, our advisors, and our early investors, a great sample group of our target market, which are millennial urban women. And now we are taking that validation to market direct to consumer and on and off premise in Los Angeles as we scale to further regions.
Randall.
Really cool. I'm not a big drinker, so I'm interested. There's a appeal to it. I do have a lot of questions, and again, when I mentioned before, one of the top 5 reasons for companies fail is bad advice. It's hard to give advice right now, right? That's poignant without understanding the full context, right? So a lot of the questions I have would lead me to that. But things I would think about is like validation through your go-to-market approach, which is likely, like you said, going to be marketing, social media, influencer based. So like being able to show the activity around there and the fact that you've built a base and proven or validated that you could monetize that same group or following, are things I would think about. And then a whole bunch of questions about distribution, all that kind of stuff, but super cool. Interesting. Do you guys have social, like, are you on social media now? Could I look you up? And
so we do have a social media page. We're not posting until the new year as we get closer to our launch. We've been doing a lot of behind the scenes community building. So with thought leaders, influencers, core early adopters that we actually are doing sampling events with. and then seeding our product into select accounts in Los Angeles. So on-premise accounts like Spring Place and Soho House and different hotels. And so that's what we're going to be doing prior to our D2C launch.
Cool. And the other thing is I would try to avoid, like your goal is not always to raise it. Like you want to raise as little money as possible at the beginning till you get to the point where you could know the path to profitability and then really start bringing the rounds on then because they're safer and you're diluting yourself less, saving more for your team, all that kind of stuff. So I would really focus on, like I said, building a customer base that I could prove I could monetize before I take money on, and like have an honest conversation with some of your new employees and these people that have extended reach that have worked for these other brands, like with what you have right now and with friends and family or on credit or whatever means of raising money, how big could you get? And then what's the cutoff point? And like, what are the markers? So, month to month, am I getting close to there, or should I start panicking? And do I need to rethink this about bringing money on sooner? And what does that mean to the team and founders and everything?
Yeah, that's exactly what we've considered. Because in beverage, it's a large upfront capital cost just for inventory, for a D2C platform, for distribution support, that sort of thing. We do need to bring on investment at this stage, post product, but pre like market. So that's why we're raising at this stage, but we will be raising like a larger round once we do have that validation and we're able to test, especially the Los Angeles market. That's why we're choosing this as our pilot market.
Yeah. And then something else for founders, because it sounds like where you're going with it and how much, and that's great. Then the next step happens, and founders spend time working on the business, which is fundraising, almost 50% of the time. And then it's like, shoot, I got to do something right with it. And then I also still have to report back and keep them happy and prepare myself for the next round because it's going to take months to get it. So really starting to think about when I get this money, am I prepared from an infrastructure perspective to track every penny, know where it's going, understand what I'm expecting out of it, and have my leading indicators, early measures to say the investment is not working in this particular area and pull it quickly. So this would require like an MVP approach or MVT in marketing, minimal viable testing. So before you'd launch a campaign to 1 million people, take a chunk of 1,000, slowly get it, massage it, and then, so what I'm talking about. But yeah, that's how I'd look at it.
Daniel, for your background, Randall, for your background, I have recommended to Daniel, we found there is a $750,000 grant by the US government possible for combating addiction problems, alcohol and drugs. And this would be a shoe in my opinion, if the right people read the grant application to get your $750,000 non-dilutive funding and fulfill their great mission.
Absolutely. I did speak with Delia yesterday. So
okay, great. Good to hear.
That's great. And also one last comment. And now Mira also wants to talk about Maxwell Bio, introduce them. In Daniel's presentation, when you're presenting, don't save the best for the last. You need to, your strongest point is your team. You've got to say that earlier on. Otherwise, we see presentations which talks too much on the ideas, and many of them are in napkin stage. They are solo players, they're too early. So that's the only thing. Your storytelling was phenomenal, world-class. And if you at that time say, my vision has been validated by getting top team on board, that's a killer combination. So once again, thank you. And now we are working, we love to get mentors on our platform. And we have someone who was the deal flow chair of Kiritsu Forum. She invested in many companies, including Chris Atwell's company, Sage Medic. And she liked this company so much because they want to go public, Maxwell Bio, that she joined them as corporate development head. So Mira is also helping us host our event during JP Morgan. And what's now happening that JP Morgan has totally got virtual. Offline has been canceled. And suddenly in the last 2 days, so many new investors are coming to us. I think people whose job was to go to JP Morgan, they cannot come anymore. They are coming to our event. To give one example, someone signed up from B Capital Partners, whose founder is Eduardo Severin, co-founder of Facebook. These are people who just signed up once JP Morgan in-person event got canceled. So Mira, welcome. Can you briefly introduce Maxwell Bio and how we are creating the Life Sciences Committee? Just speak about it for a couple of minutes.
Sure, yeah. So I'm guessing like don't share a deck or anything, just kind of speak
right.
now. Excellent.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Well, I appreciate the opportunity. Actually, I've been very actively communicating with a whole stream of investors this morning as we're looking to close out our seed equity round. But let me tell you about Maxwell and the reason why I left my role as the vice president at Kretzu Forum, chair of the deal screening, and have joined this company because I've seen a ton of deal flow, hundreds, if not thousands of companies, and very few have impressed me so much with their transformational capacity and potential, not only to impact humanity and wellness and the world, but also to provide tremendous returns for investors as we look for how big this platform that we're building can be. So what we do, we're essentially a company that's, well, without kind of showing you visually, imagine your innate immune system. You're constantly being bombarded by pathogens, viral, bacterial, fungal threats that are coming. Think of the pandemic that's upon us now with COVID, cancer threats. So your body is constantly fighting with your innate immune system. And we have something that we're armed with called peptides. Actually, we have like 1,000 to 3,000 peptides in our system doing all sorts of things. There's one particular one. It's called a human cathelicidin antimicrobial peptide. Without getting into too much science, it's one part of your immune system that fights pathogens, but it breaks down quickly. It's prone to enzyme degradation. Bacteria will shoot enzymes out it to break it down so it's weak. And pharmaceuticals companies have been trying to use peptides for therapeutics, but you'll see the number of therapeutics with that kind of foundation have been waning. They're going down because they're realizing these clinical shortcomings, these weaknesses. So what Maxwell does is we've created a first-in-class breakthrough drug development platform that has biomimicry of those innate capabilities of your body, but it kind of like puts an Iron Man suit on it and makes them more potent, more stable. The safety results are incredible. So we're mimicking the best, most powerful parts of your innate immune system with that enhanced stability, potency, and capability. And we're starting with this one particular peptide out of the thousands that we could mimic because there's so much research, there's so much activity, over 250 published articles, peer-reviewed published articles in high-impact journals, validating our science. NIAID, which is the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease, tested our compounds, found them to be extremely potent against the SARS coronavirus. They retested them, came back and said we have pan-coronavirus efficacy. So it's quite tremendous. We're just now got word literally yesterday about how that's moving forward to move the compounds forward for more research and more development. There's a doctor working at the Baylor College of Medicine who works with immunocompromised patients that have fungal infections set in. They don't always die from cancer, they die from these opportunistic infections. For decades, he's tested things and found no solution until our compounds. So the Maxwell platform kind of solves this problem of being able to literally destroy the pathogen. I'm not showing you a visual, but if you think of the SARS coronavirus, for instance, our compounds literally attack a particular characteristic of the membrane, breaks it open, and destroys the membrane completely, gums it up, it can't replicate. They actually said it's truly virucidal, fungicidal, bactericidal. So there's lots of capabilities, but what does that mean for us in the world? Well, pharmaceuticals companies are looking for robust drug candidates that are going to, make it through the drug development pathway, which is a very expensive pathway, but with more robust candidates. And if you look at what we've got our hands on, the capabilities are vast. So right now, the market for just mimicking this cathelicidin peptide is a $371 billion market. There's tremendous opportunity. Our team is absolutely tremendous. We have the world-class business capabilities with Joshua, our CEO, 19 years of CEO experience, leading world-first companies, and our scientific team powered by Annalise Barron, who's an NIH Pioneer Award winner. She's literally recognized by her absolutely world-class achievements in this space. Our Chief Scientific Officer, who's a leading biomimetic chemistry expert. So we've got the science and the patents, tremendous patent portfolio that we own outright, plus we in-license some strategically from NYU, which is where our CSO, our Chief Scientific Officer, is from. The licensing model, spin-out model, revenue generation model of the company does not require us to wait until the full end of FDA approval. The model is to license and work. We are a kind of an R&D company that will create candidates, and the relationships we'll have will generate upfront, milestone, and ongoing generation from a business model perspective. And we have our first pharmaceuticals deal already moving forward. The first stages of the execution are happening, and it's not with a human health company, it's with an animal health livestock company that is tackling an absolutely massive global threat to pork populations. And they're actually approached Maxwell because we have something that attacks any envelope virus and destroys it. So we're actually right now working on that research to move analogs forward and get a solution out. So lots of opportunity. If you look at biotech platform companies, comparable IPO exits, just with kind of preclinical phase one, the comparables are showing kind of a return on investment of about 25 times. And that's just where it starts.
Mira, before Randall and Axel gives their comments, I have a quick question. You raised $30 million in non-dilutive funding from not only US government, also Australia and other governments.
Absolutely, so Japanese, US, Australian, 30 million.
Share very briefly the experience and what other entrepreneurs should aspire for to get to government funding?
Yeah, actually, I think one of the things that we did, which was really brilliant, if you think of software and software development kits, you have like a foundation that you let people develop upon it. That is what our company has done. I think we're almost the only company that has like a scientific development kit. So we send out our compounds that are highly patented, and we have a kind of like an agency model. So we'll send our compounds, for instance, David Corey at the Baylor College of Medicine. So he's doing work with fungal infections, and we send them this kit. He works with the compounds, he finds a solution. Any of the scientists work with our compounds, they'll get, we'll process the patents for them. They'll get 10% ongoing like royalties or compensation from that. We own the patents, but we're sending the compounds out. The Australian government doing work with how to prevent infection on contact lenses, the Japanese government, how to work with hepatitis, which is also a precursor of liver cancer, which is a big issue in Asia. So we have scientists all over working on different indications that use our compounds, develop. We're the benefactors. They're the lions. They're the experts. So they get funding. They request the funding. We help them and support them with those grant applications. And all that funding goes to support Maxwell's compounds and research and new applications. But everybody wins. And I think it's that triple win, like formula that allows everyone to benefit. And we're freely like wanting others to develop. We don't want to like keep it all closed in like many researchers do. We've shared it. And the benefits of that can be just multiplied.
You are curating the ecosystem. Fantastic.
Yes.
We call this in other market. You are in the platform business, not in the individual product business. You have an enabling platform where others in combination with the platform create the ultimate product.
Absolutely. And they take it to market. They go through those steps, but we form the foundational precursors with our, literally no one has done what we're doing with this kind of lifelike nanotechnology, and they build from that. So it's.
And by the way, I have sent you a direct message. Pick it up and we can talk about this more.
All right. And Randall, does he want to make a comment?
I mean, it sounds very interesting. I could see why you made the move. I mean, what a promising company. Congratulations on your round as of recent. One of the things that just comes up in my head when you're talking about your process, and you may or may not already know this, is the like consolidating the markets. And when you have a solution that competes in multiple markets in sense to like create that platform view. In my past, I've always underestimated the amount of resources that would need to go into educating the market, you know, on this different solution. I always made the mistake of saying, well, the individual markets are primed, but I didn't understand they weren't ready for the big overall message, and it just took more time than necessary. And I have some suggestions just based off what I've done. If you'd like to talk offline about that, I could help.
Yeah. We're also looking to enlist one of the world's top PR firms, because right now we've been kind of staying under the radar with what we're doing, but there's so much capability that we're looking to engage now with someone who can really share that messaging and get that sort of knowledge built up about what's possible with what we're doing, because it could be.
To Randall's point, I lost a company within the software platform business, and I initially grew the company by creating an end product, and then we had the second stage of the product development, and there I switched completely over to become a platform company versus a product company, and I failed completely at this.
Too early.
And our customers told us day one, we will never utilize this tool, because they were not believing that we can be better with our computer-generated technology than with their human minds. And if I would have understood where I grew in the first place and created a product out of it directly to market, I would have not lost the company.
Great. I think this was good. And Mira, also just compared to how Axel is running the logistics, how Sharon ran last week, because both are very good, both has merits. Actually, your events, investor events, are like how Axel is running. And then let us look at the pros and cons of both. We are going to run a JP Morgan event. Great. So now this is the end of this portion. We have two small portions left. Axel is going to post my slide where I'm going to share seven mindset hacks for innovation and funding. You know, I can speak about it all day, but I'm going to do the 7 within 10 minutes. And then Axel will talk about his experience leading on our behalf corporate innovation spin-off of large Japanese companies, and the lessons from a mindset point of view, Silicon Valley versus other cultures. And then he will give the closing remarks and close it. So today we have 7.
Is the slide visible? Because I cannot see this right now.
I can see it.
Okay, good, perfect.
Yeah, perfect. So first, I'm going to the 7 slide points are on, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to say the first one, give few comments, move to the second one, third one, go to the end. And at the end, if people have any question, they can ask. Otherwise, I'll hand over the floor to Axel. I would encourage everybody at least take a photo of this. This may be one slide, but it has taken decades of experience to come up with this. And this is oversimplification at the highest. But once again, this is series 1. This is a new series we have started today, training series with Boss Capital Partners, which is said from innovation to funding. And the first one is mindset. So we are going to talk briefly about mindset, 7 mindset hacks for innovation and funding. So the first one is fostering collaborative mindset which is our values, our core value of Pitch Global. To give an example, we are mentoring 2 companies out of the many we are mentoring on behalf of US government funded programs in Northern California. And the founder of the 2 companies, Cargo Chief and Telemetrac, both, even though they both attended Harvard Business, they met at our event. And Cargo Chief became investor advisor to Telemetrac because someone else could have thought of them as competition, but they felt this is about how creating ecosystem. And now Telemetric got grants, and now Cargo Chief is getting help how Telemetric got grant. So this is how, if you can become collaborative, that means develop collaborative mindset for others instead of looking at them as competition. Ultimately, you will develop collaborative mindset for within you, and it will create empathy for yourself, and you will look within, and you will be able to make your mindset more conducive to your success. So what is mindset? Point 2, our experience shapes our beliefs. That means when we undergo a positive experience, we get a positive mindset. We undergo a negative experience, we get a negative mindset on that particular thing. Like, for instance, someone who's never had a car accident will have a certain set of mindset about driving on the freeway. But if, unfortunately, that person gets into a car accident, that person's mindset about driving on the freeway will make a change. It has to be, that's human nature. So basically, our experience shapes our beliefs, and which shapes our mindset. So that's the second point. Then 3 is, what is unique about Silicon Valley mindset? It is tolerance to failure, which means someone starts a company and fails in most part of the world, that will give him a negative mindset. It has to, or her, a negative mindset, because that's the nature of the mind. However, Silicon Valley ecosystem is very conducive to treating a failure up to a certain point as a badge of honor. And tolerance for failure says, okay, you have learned, now next time you won't make the mistakes. So that is the Silicon Valley mindset, which goes against human nature, against normal grain of how we usually would get affected through an experience, negative experience. So basically, you can have a positive outcome even from a negative experience, which in normal cases is not the case. And how to have an innovation mindset. This is also tied to the following point, how to engage all 3 parts of the mind: reptilian, emotional, neocortex, which means most of the time, our mind, a big portion of our mind is reptilian brain. A small portion is neocortex, that which generates thought and cognition. And in middle, we have the emotional brain. So the thing is, in order for you to be innovative, you cannot do more of the same, or you cannot work even harder, because you already work as an entrepreneur, you're already working very hard. So a couple of examples of how innovation took place. Take the example of the printing press. Gutenberg went wine tasting and saw wine presses and got the idea of printing press. So if Gutenberg just stayed at home or is in his home office and worked even harder, he wouldn't have had the breakthrough innovation. So in order to have an innovation mindset, you got to rest and relax, and also expose yourself to domains from outside your normal reality, because that's where, from your context, the new ideas will come from. That's why people like Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, they all talk about the books they are reading, because that's where, and especially these books would be from outside their syllabus or outside what they do. So how to engage all 3 parts of the mind? This is a huge topic, but you can read more on them. But the key is, most of the time, human beings are, human beings are about operating from survival mode. So you have to, as Mira says, connect the dots and also create the context so that the dots would connect in a non-linear way. So you got to keep the playing field so that you rest, relax, connect with friends and family. All these things are also dots in your world, which can create innovation. So now we come to the last 2 points: how to understand the mindset of investors, especially CVCs, for funding and partnerships. You got to understand that it's not one size fit all. You got to do the research, you got to have empathy, and you got to understand what people are really looking for. And if there are multiple general partners in a VC firm, or if it's a large corporation, like we hosted IBM Ventures last month, and they talked about how the various ways by which people can connect within IBM. That's great. Even Boss Capital Partners is a huge fan of Stephen Covey. They are, Greg Shepard always talks about Stephen Covey. I love, begin with the end in mind and sharpen the saw. Wow. I also am a huge fan. So how to understand the mindset of investors is you got to first acknowledge that it's not one size fit all. You got to, and then just taking IBM's example, if the normal perception may be IBM companies are too small. If you are not at a certain stage, IBM may not be interested. However, there are areas like quantum computing where they are investing a lot. They are really seeking how to find the next big thing there. So if you are a quantum computing entrepreneur and even very small, you may not even consider IBM. But you know what? You got to do the research. You got to not break away from the limiting beliefs and see how you can make things happen even in a nonlinear way. And the last point is, which I always emphasize, how to shape the perception of investors. When you're presenting to strangers, they will judge you because the judgment is a nature of the mind. I mean, if I say I don't judge, I have no judgment, it only means my IQ is 0 and I'm a zombie, which is not possible. So judgment is a necessary evil. So but you got to shape the judgment in your favor by maximizing your perception, and that you can do is upfront. Beat your own drums. First 50 seconds, don't even present. Just talk about yourself, your co-founder, your team, how great you are. If you say that, top 4 or 5 things which make you unique, you can even say, in my last company, I exited, or I was VP here, or I have a PhD, whatever it is. First 30, 40 seconds, you got to make the glass half full rather than half empty, so that people look at you with more attention. So on that note, these are the 7 mindset hacks for innovation and funding. And I hand over the floor to Axel.
Thank you so much, Casey. Very insightful and totally in agreement with what's being said there. And it's a good segue for the lessons. And since I did it once, I have rethought what I'm saying today. And I think my lesson number 1 for corporate companies is, do not start a startup company within your corporation without completely isolating it from the corporate mindset. Number 1 failure of corporate mindset: you have too much money. So in my case example, they had 21 patents, $25 million investment into an R&D, only to ultimately understand that it didn't fit their company culture, it didn't fit their customer profiles, it didn't fit their sales channels. So they developed something that didn't fit into their entire corporate structure. But you had spent 25 million, so what's the only consequence you have? The only consequence is that you need to spin it out and make it its own entity to actually somehow capitalize it. And what you get, we heard this early on in our presentation from Boss Capital Partners, if the valuation is wrong, then you can't go anywhere. So where do you go on a corporate balance sheet with a $25 million investment and zero customer traction? What do you think is your pre-money valuation? And that was the first tooth that I had to pull out of this corporate to say, yeah, the best I can probably get for you is between 6 and 9 million pre-money. Yeah, it is good that we have 21 patents for 6 to 9 million, but it wouldn't be good to make an uplift on 25 million to go to 30 million. So that was one very important thing. The second thing that any startup company can learn from this key example is when you go out to the investors, you have to have all your ducats in the row. That means also you have to have an investor presentation that covers all the necessary importance, such as what will be your going to market strategy. Ideally, you have customer traction. Early customer validation is so highly important. And what's your market? And when we dissect the market, which part of the market and why can you address first? Yeah, so it doesn't help when we actually put so much, I call it scent into the eyes of the investor to say, oh, our total addressable market is $6.5 trillion. You will never get to $6.5 trillion if you cannot show me how you get your first customer and why. It's so important to understand why did you get actually your first customer? Because that's where you build your strategy to actually go out. So my first part was to actually spend time to learn what they did and translate this into a presentation that was digestible to the customer. At the same stage, I tried to understand the management team, and I try to understand the financial requirements, because as I said, you come with the wrong valuation expectations, I cannot raise you funding from the venture capital community. At the time, I also said you need to have all your ducks in the row, which means you are not spin out yet, you need to spin out. Oh, no, that happens quickly once we have an interested investor. Okay, then I said, your management team is not tuned up to be presentable to the investor. We need to add 2 other positions out of the US market. Maybe that happens at a later stage. All those 2 points were initially not extremely well followed up. 3 months in, we learned that precisely the management team was considered weak, and we needed to add to the positions. And then we finally got the traction in the venture community, a dream for every entrepreneur, right? There is an investor that is almost close to write a term sheet. Guess what happens when you want to have a term sheet? You want to have a data room. You want to make sure that what the vehicle is you're going to invest in, which was the spun out corporation and not the intention to spin out. So once it was clear that we can get a term sheet, that is the right conditions that we envisioned, the CEO had to go to the headquarters and negotiate the spin out. That didn't take, as understood, 1 week. It didn't take 2 weeks. It took 3 months. What can you guess what happens? The investors disappeared. Because the investor that is hot today, their focus is changing, and they may not be hot tomorrow anymore or a month from now. You have to be able to seize the moment. So the company ultimately got, through Pitch Global, the right connection. They got new people. They got ultimately also investment, but it was hurting my heart that I lost the traction with one of the prime investors because it wasn't followed through with what we wanted it to look like at a given point. So whether you are a small startup company, whether you are a big corporate spin out, the rules are identical. It doesn't make it any easier for you if you are a spin out from IBM because at that point in time, you will be still, the spin-out is being treated as any other startup company. And if you don't follow the rules, that is one of the most important lessons. And everything we touched upon today, from valuation, from the right team, from the right go-into-market strategy, everything we learned in the early on is so true for my use case as well. So I encourage that people that come to Pitch Global come in and take a look as how we actually talk with companies, what advice we give, because we are looking at about 300 companies a year. I personally mentor about 30 to 40 companies a year. And what is so important, what actually Casey just said, that you need to be able to go cross-disciplinary. I have spent my time in many different verticals: life sciences, cybersecurity, computing, and other product ranges, creating semiconductor. That actually brings a new mindset. Dot connector, I consider myself a dot connector. I will never be able, although I could, if I really spend a lot of time, I will never be able to develop a single biologics. But I can tell you where you can position it and what the risk factors are, despite that I can go and build underneath and connect a few proteins together to build something. And those are very special capabilities that need to be listened to so that we can help to make you the next big thing. And that's my dream for the rest of my life, to help entrepreneurs to create the wealth they envision and the world-changing impact that the world needs to get to the next stage. With that said, I wanted to keep it brief and not too long today. We had wonderful examples of entrepreneurs pitching. We had a great presentation from our co-sponsor of Boss Capital. We had our great presentation, also sponsor of Maxwell Biotech, Maxwell Bioscience. The reason why I always get this wrong, because I was the core advisor to a venture fund called Maxwell Biotech. And you get me every single time on that. So, Casey, it's always a pleasure not only being together with you in the business world, but you're a great friend, also a philosopher. So you always give me the attribute, but it's vice versa true as well, especially as you demonstrated with your 7 mindsets for the hack. And I think we put a wonderful program together as a first in a series of at least 7. Yes. We are all about entrepreneurship. And the final word, those who would like to pitch, we have a great event on January 5th. We took up the major effort from on the side of Pitch Global, and it wasn't actually cheap, to go into parallel to CES on a 6 to 9 program on January 5th. And any company that wants to pitch there, please go to our Eventbrite page and buy yourself a ticket. It's a wonderful opportunity with great investors and mentors being there. Casey, final word is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Axel. You've given the final word, but I'll still say, everyone, please mark your calendar for 7th morning, 7th January, because we are going to have a second episode on 7 steps from innovation to funding. Today it was a mindset episode. Second one would be business planning and strategy episode, co-hosted by Boss Capital Partners. So it'll be a curriculum. If you just do this every once a month, it will position you and it will make you part of a very nurturing and supporting community. So please mark your calendar if you can, and we will email all of you as well for 7th morning. Any final word? Jillian, if you're there, why don't you give a final word?
Sounds great. This was wonderful. I'm happy to be here and kick off the first of the 7, possibly more events. I think the only thing I would say is if anyone wants to sign up, I put all the details in the chat. If you have questions, you can reach out to me, but I'd love to pull some optics, what's working, what's not based on the courses, and we can use that to dovetail into the next section. And Randall will be presenting again on January 7th. So we're really excited to see you and thank you for having us.
You're welcome. Thank you, everybody. I declare the event closed. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Everyone, take care. Thanks,
Thank you.
Casey.
Welcome here.
So